The celestial Voyager, pride of the galactic cruise lines, drifted helplessly in the void. Its once gleaming hull now scarred by explosions, the ship's distress beacon pulsed weakly into the cosmic night. Inside, chaos reigned as passengers from 100 worlds scrambled for safety. Among them, a group of Qatarian females huddled in terror, their features, considered hideous by their own species, contorted in fear. Ralph Clark, human engineer and maintenance crew member, sprinted through smoke-filled corridors. His heart pounded as he processed the alert flashing on his wrist computer. Critical engine failure. The ship's alien crew, despite their vaunted superiority, floundered in the face of cascading system failures. As Ralph rounded a corner, he collided with a Qatarian female. Her mottled skin and asymmetrical features marked her as one of the ugly passengers, typically shunned by other species. "Please," she gasped. "I'm Lyra, my sisters. We're trapped." Ralph's mind raced. The Qatarians were in the aft escape pod bay, exactly where he needed to go to reach the engines. He nodded. "Lead the way. I'll get you out." They rushed through the ship, ducking under sparking conduits and leaping over debris. The celestial Voyager groaned around them, its superstructure stressed to the breaking point. They reached the escape pod bay to find a group of Qatarian females pounding desperately on a sealed door. Without hesitation, Ralph pried open an access panel. His hands flew over the controls, bypassing safety protocols and rerouting power. With a hiss, the bay doors slid open. "Go!" he shouted, ushering the Qatarians inside. As the females boarded the escape pods, Ralph's communicator crackled. The bridge was in chaos. Other alien crew members, from races that had looked down on humanity for centuries, were either frozen in panic or had already abandoned ship. Ralph made a decision. He couldn't leave these passengers, ugly or not, to die. He began the launch sequence for the escape pods, knowing it would delay his attempts to save the ship. As the pods ejected, carrying the grateful Qatarians to safety, Ralph turned his attention to the engine room. The ship lurched violently. Life support was failing, and fires raged unchecked on multiple decks. Ralph fought his way through, using his strength to force open jammed doors and his ingenuity to bypass damaged systems. Word of the humans' actions spread through the ship. Alien passengers watched in disbelief as this member of a primitive species took charge where their own kind had failed. Some, shamed by their inaction, began to assist in evacuation efforts. In the engine room, Ralph faced a nightmarish tangle of advanced alien technology pushed far beyond its limits. He didn't understand half of what he saw, but he knew the basics: contain the plasma breach, restore coolant flow, reroute power. With sweat pouring down his face, he worked furiously. As Ralph struggled to save the celestial Voyager, the incident was already sending shockwaves through the galactic community. Humanity, long dismissed as barely spacefaring, had shown courage and capability that put other races to shame. And they had done so not for glory or gain, but to save lives, even those of aliens considered repulsive by their own kind. The fate of the great cruise ship hung in the balance, along with the lives of thousands of passengers and crew. But in those desperate hours, one thing had become clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same again. Ralph's hands trembled as he finished the launch sequence for the escape pods. The grateful faces of the Qatarian females vanished into the void, their pods streaking away from the stricken celestial Voyager. He allowed himself a moment of relief before turning his attention to the engine room. As he took a step forward, the ship lurched violently. Ralph stumbled, his body suddenly light as a feather. The artificial gravity was failing. All around him, loose objects began to float, creating a surreal underwater effect in the corridors. "Emergency Protocol Alpha 79, Ralph shouted into his communicator. "Gravity failure on Deck 12. He pushed off the wall, propelling himself towards a nearby emergency locker. Inside, he found magnetic boots and a set of tethers. As he strapped on the boots, a group of panicked passengers rounded the corner, flailing in the zero-gravity environment. "Everyone, stay calm," Ralph called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. He recognized the mottled skin and asymmetrical features of more Qatarian females. "I'm going to get you to safety. Follow my lead." Working quickly, Ralph fashioned a makeshift harness system using the emergency tethers. He connected the Catarians to each other and himself, creating a human chain. "All right, ladies," he said, activating his magnetic boots. "I'll be your anchor. Just hold on tight and let me guide you." With careful, measured steps, Ralph led the group through the zero-gravity maze of corridors. They passed other aliens struggling in the weightlessness, a Tellarite spinning helplessly, an Andorian couple clinging to a doorframe. Ralph paused at each, offering advice on how to navigate the new environment. As they neared a designated safe zone, Ralph's communicator crackled to life. "This is Captain Zorn. Who is coordinating the evacuation on Deck 12? Ralph swallowed hard. He recognized the name of the Rigelian captain, known for his disdain towards humans. "Sir, this is Ralph Clark, maintenance crew. I'm guiding a group of passengers to safety now." There was a pause. When Zorn spoke again, his tone had changed. "Understood, Mr. Clark. Continue your efforts. Report to the bridge when you've secured those passengers." In the safe zone, Ralph helped the Catarian females secure themselves to designated anchor points. As he worked, he noticed one of them watching him intently. It was Lyra, the first Catarian he had encountered. "Thank you," she said softly. "You've saved us twice now." Ralph nodded, offering a small smile. "Just doing what needs to be done. Will you be all right here?" Lyra's features shifted in what Ralph assumed was a smile. "Yes, we'll help others as they arrive. You've shown us how." With a final check of the safe zone, Ralph made his way to the bridge. The ship's control center was a scene of almost unchecked panic. Alien crew members argued in a cacophony of languages, their usual coordinated efficiency shattered by the crisis. Captain Zorn stood at the center, his tall Rigelian frame radiating authority despite the chaos. His eyes locked onto Ralph as he entered. "Mr. Clark, report." Ralph straightened his posture. "Sir, I've secured the passengers from Deck 12 in Safe Zone Bravo. The Catarian females are organizing to assist others as they arrive." Zorn's expression was unreadable. "And the engine room? What's the status there?" Before Ralph could respond, a new voice cut through the din. "Captain, we have a situation in engineering." All eyes turned to the view screen, where the face of a Vulcan appeared. His features were calm, but Ralph could see the tension in his eyes. "Sovic," Zorn acknowledged. "What's happening?" "The fires are spreading faster than anticipated," Sovic reported. "Our standard protocols are proving insufficient." Ralph stepped forward, his mind racing. "Sir, if I may, I have experience with unconventional fire suppression techniques. I could assist in engineering." Sovic's eyebrow raised a fraction. "Captain, with all due respect, this is a highly advanced system. A human's assistance would be—" "Logical," Zorn interrupted, surprising everyone. "Mr. Clark has already demonstrated resourcefulness in this crisis. Sovic, allow him to assist. We need all hands on deck." Ralph nodded gratefully and rushed to engineering. The scene that greeted him was one of barely controlled chaos. Fires raged behind containment fields, while Sovic and his team worked frantically at control panels. "Mr. Clark," Sovic acknowledged curtly, "what do you propose?" Ralph surveyed the room, his mind piecing together a plan. "We need to think outside the box. Your containment fields are holding, but they're not stopping the spread. We need to cut off the oxygen supply." Sovic's expression remained neutral, but there was a glimmer of interest in his eyes. "Elaborate." For the next hour, Ralph and Sovic worked in tandem. Ralph's practical knowledge complemented Sovic's theoretical expertise. They rerouted power, modified containment fields, and implemented a staged depressurization that slowly smothered the fires. As the last flames flickered out, Sovic turned to Ralph. "Your methods were unorthodox, but effective. Perhaps there is more to human ingenuity than I had previously calculated." Word of their success spread quickly through the ship. Ralph found himself the center of attention as he made his way back to the bridge. Aliens who had previously ignored him now nodded in respect. An Andorian diplomat, Thera, even stopped him to shake his hand. "You've done your species proud," she said warmly. Not everyone was impressed, however. As Ralph entered the bridge, he overheard a group of Tellarite merchants grumbling. "Pure luck," one snorted. humans meddling in affairs beyond their understanding. Captain Zorn silenced them with a look. He approached Ralph, his expression serious. "Mr. Clark, in light of your actions today, I'm promoting you to Acting Chief of Emergency Operations." Ralph blinked in surprise. "Sir, I'm honored, but—" "This isn't a request," Zorn said firmly. "We need your skills. Report to Station Alpha and begin coordinating our rescue efforts." As Ralph moved to his new station, he caught sight of a Cardassian officer glaring at him. The alien's eyes burned with barely concealed anger and resentment. Before Ralph could dwell on it, his console lit up with a priority alert. His eyes widened as he processed the information. "Captain," he called out, his voice tense, "I've detected signs of sabotage in our communications array. This may not have been an accident." The bridge fell silent as the implication sank in. Captain Zorn's expression hardened. "Investigate discreetly, Mr. Clark. For now, our priority remains saving this ship and everyone on board." Ralph nodded, his mind already racing with the challenges ahead. The Celestial Voyager was still adrift, its systems barely functioning, and now the specter of sabotage loomed over them all. As he began coordinating rescue efforts across the ship, Ralph couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were nowhere near the end. Ralph's mind raced as he processed the implications of the potential sabotage. The Celestial Voyager was not just damaged. It had been deliberately targeted. He opened his mouth to share his thoughts with Captain Zorn when a new alert flashed across his console. "Captain," Ralph called out, his voice tight with urgency, "we have a critical failure in the food synthesizers on decks 3 through 7. Zorn's eyes narrowed. Extent of the damage? Ralph's fingers flew over the controls, pulling up diagnostics. "It's spreading, sir. At this rate, we'll lose all food production capacity within 6 hours." The bridge fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. With thousands of passengers from dozens of species, each with unique dietary needs, the loss of the synthesizers could be catastrophic. "Mr. Clark," Zorn said, his voice low but firm, "you've proven yourself capable in a crisis. I want you to take charge of this situation. Organize teams, ration our remaining supplies, and find a way to keep everyone fed. Do whatever it takes." Ralph nodded, already formulating a plan. "Understood, sir. I'll need access to all cargo manifests and permission to enter private quarters if necessary." "Granted," Zorn replied. "Keep me informed of your progress." As Ralph left the bridge, he tapped his communicator. "Sovic, meet me in Cargo Bay 2. We have a new problem." Within the hour, Ralph had assembled a diverse team of crew members and volunteers. Sovic stood at his side, datapad in hand, as Ralph addressed the group. "Listen up," Ralph began, his voice carrying across the cargo bay. "Our food synthesizers are failing. We need to inventory every scrap of food on this ship and create a rationing system that works for all species. It won't be easy and it won't be popular, but it's necessary for survival." He divided the group into teams, assigning each to specific decks and tasks. As they dispersed, Ralph noticed Lyra approaching. "Ralph," she said, her multifaceted eyes reflecting concern. "My sisters and I want to help. Our sense of smell. We can detect food that others might miss." Ralph smiled, grateful for the offer. "That would be incredibly helpful, Lyra. Can you start with the passenger decks? Focus on finding any hidden caches or perishables that need immediate attention." As Lyra nodded and turned to leave, Ralph caught a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. He turned to see Gul Damar, the Cardassian officer, watching him with barely concealed disdain. "Is there a problem, Gul Damar?" Ralph asked, keeping his tone neutral. Damar's lips curled into a sneer. "Just observing how quickly humans seize power in a crisis. One would almost think you engineered this situation." Before Ralph could respond, Sovic interjected. "Your insinuation is illogical, Gul Damar. Mr. Clark's actions have been demonstrably beneficial to all aboard." Damar's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more as he stalked away. Ralph made a mental note to keep a close eye on the Cardassian. Over the next several hours, Ralph coordinated the massive undertaking of cataloging and redistributing the ship's food supplies. Reports flooded in from all decks, some encouraging, others troubling. Sir, a young Andorian ensign reported, we found several passengers attempting to hoard rations. What should we do? Ralph sighed, rubbing his temples. Confiscate the excess, but be diplomatic about it. Explain the necessity of equal distribution. If they resist, log their names and inform security. As the day wore on, Ralph found himself mediating disputes between species with conflicting dietary needs, improvising storage solutions for perishable items, and constantly adjusting the rationing algorithm with Sovik to account for new variables. It was well into the ship's night cycle when Lyra sought him out again. She looked troubled. Ralph, she said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard, we found something unusual in one of the officers' quarters. Ralph's exhaustion evaporated. Show me. Lyra led him to a set of quarters on deck 5. As the door slid open, Ralph's eyes widened. The room was filled with crates of premium synthesized foods, enough to feed dozens for weeks. Whose quarters are these? Ralph asked, though he already suspected the answer. Lyra confirmed his fears. Gul Damar's. Ralph's teeth gritted. He tapped his communicator. Captain Zorn, this is Clark. I need you in Gul Damar's quarters immediately. We have a situation. Within minutes, Zorn arrived, followed closely by a fuming Gul Damar. The Cardassian's face paled as he saw his hidden cache exposed. Explain yourself, Gul Damar, Zorn demanded, his voice cold with anger. Damar sputtered, his usual composure shattered. I was merely securing provisions for yourself, Ralph interjected, his tone level but firm. While others go hungry. Zorn turned to Ralph. Mr. Clark, what do you recommend? Ralph met Damar's hateful glare without flinching. Confiscate the supplies for general distribution? As for Gul Damar, he's demonstrated he can't be trusted with authority in this crisis. I suggest relieving him of duty. Zorn nodded grimly. Make it so, Mr. Clark. Gul Damar, consider yourself demoted and confined to quarters. As Damar was escorted away, Ralph felt a mix of satisfaction and unease. They'd solved one problem, but he couldn't shake the feeling that greater challenges lay ahead. Lyra touched his arm gently. You did the right thing, Ralph. Come, you need to rest. Tomorrow will bring new trials. Ralph nodded, allowing himself to be led away from the scene. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice the way Lyra's hand lingered on his arm, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature controls. With the immediate food crisis temporarily averted, Ralph's mind turned to the ship's other pressing issues. The life support systems were still deteriorating, and the mystery of the sabotage remained unsolved. As he prepared for a few hours of much-needed sleep, Ralph knew that the true test of his leadership and humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. Ralph's mind raced as he processed the implications of the potential sabotage. The celestial Voyager was not just damaged. It had been deliberately targeted. He opened his mouth to share his thoughts with Captain Zorn when a new alert flashed across his console. Captain, Ralph called out, his voice tight with urgency. We have a critical failure in the food synthesizers on decks 3 through 7. Zorn's eyes narrowed. Extent of the damage? Ralph's fingers flew over the controls, pulling up diagnostics. It's spreading, sir. At this rate, we'll lose all food production capacity within 6 hours. The bridge fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. With thousands of passengers from dozens of species, each with unique dietary needs, the loss of the synthesizers could be catastrophic. Mr. Clark, Zorn said, his voice low but firm, you've proven yourself capable in a crisis. I want you to take charge of this situation. Organize teams, ration our remaining supplies, and find a way to keep everyone fed. Do whatever it takes. Ralph nodded, already formulating a plan. Understood, sir. I'll need access to all cargo manifests and permission to enter private quarters if necessary. Granted, Zorn replied. Keep me informed of your progress. As Ralph left the bridge, he tapped his communicator. Sovik, meet me in Cargo Bay 2. We have a new problem. Over the next several hours, Ralph coordinated a massive undertaking to catalog and redistribute the ship's food supplies. He assembled teams, assigned tasks, and worked tirelessly to create a rationing system that could accommodate the diverse needs of the Celestial Voyager's passengers. As the immediate food crisis was temporarily averted, Ralph's focus shifted to the larger issues at hand. The sabotage, the failing life support systems, and the dwindling resources all greatly troubled on his mind. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Ralph said to Sovic as they finished their latest round of system checks. "Organize a thorough sweep of the ship. We'll divide into mixed-species teams, each led by a human crew member to ensure impartiality." Sovic raised an eyebrow. "A logical approach, Mr. Clark. I'll begin assembling the teams immediately." As the search teams dispersed throughout the Celestial Voyager, Ralph coordinated their efforts from a makeshift command center in Cargo Bay 2. Reports trickled in, most yielding nothing of significance, until a breathless voice crackled over the comm system. "Mr. Clark, this is Mike Donovan in Cargo Hold C. You need to see this, sir." Ralph arrived at the cargo hold to find Mike, a junior human engineer, standing before an open panel in the wall. Inside was a hidden compartment containing sleek, unfamiliar devices and what appeared to be weapons of unknown design. "Good work, Donovan," Ralph said, his voice low. "Secure this area. No one in or out without my direct authorization." Ralph immediately contacted Captain Zorn, who arrived within minutes to inspect the discovery. The captain's face grew grim as he examined the equipment. "This is far beyond anything I've seen before," Zorn muttered. "We need to keep this quiet, Mr. Clark. The last thing we need is panic spreading through the ship." Ralph nodded in agreement, but he knew that in a vessel this size, with so many diverse species in close quarters, secrets had a way of getting out. Sure enough, within hours, rumors of the discovery were spreading like wildfire through the ship's corridors. In response, Ralph implemented stricter security measures. He established rotating guard shifts and restricted access to critical areas of the ship. The increased security presence did little to calm the growing unease among the passengers. Meanwhile, the life support systems continued to deteriorate despite Ralph and Sovic's best efforts. Alarms blared as oxygen levels in several decks reached critical lows. "We have no choice," Ralph said, his face etched with concern. "We need to evacuate decks 9 through 12 immediately." The evacuation was chaotic, with frightened passengers crowding into the remaining habitable sections of the ship. Ralph worked tirelessly to coordinate the relocation, relying heavily on Lyra and her fellow Catarians to help maintain order. Lyra's empathetic abilities proved invaluable as she moved among the displaced passengers, her soothing presence diffusing tensions between different alien groups. Ralph found himself working closely with her, and he couldn't help but notice the way her multifaceted eyes seemed to linger on him when she thought he wasn't looking. As resources continued to dwindle, Ralph made the difficult decision to power down non-essential systems. "We need to conserve every bit of energy we can," he explained to the assembled crew. "That means shutting off artificial gravity in certain areas of the ship." The creation of zero-gravity zones presented new challenges. Ralph organized training sessions to help passengers and crew adapt to these conditions. He demonstrated techniques for maneuvering in zero-G, showcasing humanity's adaptability. "Remember," Ralph called out as he effortlessly navigated a zero-G corridor, "push off gently. Too much force and you'll overshoot your target." Despite these efforts, the ship's food situation reached a critical point. Ralph stared at the latest inventory report, his heart sinking. "At current consumption rates, we have maybe 3 days of supplies left," he informed Captain Zorn. "Options, Mr. Clark?" Zorn asked, his voice heavy with the weight of command. Ralph took a deep breath. "There's an asteroid field about 6 hours from our position. If we use the remaining functional shuttle, we might be able to find resources there. It's risky, but it may be our only choice." Zorn nodded slowly. "Make it happen, Mr. Clark. Who do you recommend to lead the expedition?" Ralph stood straighter. "I'll go myself, sir. I can't ask anyone else to take on that risk." As word of the planned expedition spread, Ralph found himself the center of attention once again. Some praised his bravery, while others questioned the wisdom of risking their most capable leader on such a dangerous mission. As Ralph made preparations for the resource expedition, a new crisis emerged. The ship's sensors detected an approaching vessel of unknown origin, unresponsive to hails and on an intercept course with the Celestial Voyager. The bridge erupted into frantic activity as Ralph coordinated the ship's defenses. He armed capable crew members, set up barricades at key points throughout the vessel, and worked with Sovic to boost the weakened shields using unconventional methods. Reroute power from the secondary life support systems, Ralph instructed. We need every ounce of energy we can get for the shields. As the unknown ship drew nearer, tension aboard the Celestial Voyager reached a fever pitch. Ralph found himself caught between preparing for a possible attack and maintaining order among the increasingly frightened passengers. The situation took another turn when a group of alien passengers, led by a charismatic Orion named Tharok, began advocating for surrender. "This is our only chance for survival," Tharok's voice boomed through the crowded mess hall. "We must show them we are not a threat." Ralph pushed his way through the agitated crowd, his voice cutting through the din. "We don't know their intentions. Surrendering now could put us all at greater risk." As the unknown vessel came within visual range, Ralph made a bold decision. He turned to Captain Zorn, his eyes filled with willpower. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to attempt communication one more time. Maybe if we approach them differently." Zorn nodded, his expression grim. "Make it so, Mr. Clark. The fate of this ship is in your hands." Ralph took a deep breath and stepped up to the communications console. With Lyra at his side and the eyes of the entire bridge crew upon him, he prepared to address the approaching mystery ship. The fate of the Celestial Voyager, its diverse passengers, and potentially humanity standing in the galactic community, all hung in the balance as Ralph opened the channel. Communications channel. The bridge fell silent as Ralph cleared his throat and began to speak. "Unknown vessel, this is Ralph Clark of the Celestial Voyager. We are a civilian transport experiencing severe technical difficulties. We request assistance and peaceful dialogue. Please respond." For several tense moments, there was no reply. Ralph exchanged worried glances with Lyra, who stood beside him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the starfield on the display. Suddenly, the comm system crackled to life. A deep, resonant voice filled the bridge. "Celestial Voyager, this is Captain Zorax of the Qatarian rescue vessel, Stellar Horizon. We received your distress signal and came to offer aid." A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. Ralph's shoulders relaxed slightly, but he remained cautious. "Captain Zorax, we appreciate your response. May I ask how you came to intercept our distress call?" There was a brief pause before Zorax replied, his tone conveying surprise. "I must admit I did not expect to be addressing a human. Are you in command of the Celestial Voyager?" Ralph glanced at Captain Zorn, who nodded for him to continue. "I'm the acting operations chief, sir. Our ship has experienced significant sabotage, leaving us with critical system failures and dwindling resources." As Ralph provided a concise summary of their situation, Captain Zorax listened intently. When Ralph finished, Zorax's voice carried a mix of concern and admiration. "You've managed admirably in a dire situation, Mr. Clark. We stand ready to assist. However, I must inform you that our vessel can only accommodate a fraction of your passengers." The news hit Ralph like a physical blow. He looked around the bridge, seeing the hope in the eyes of the crew quickly turn to worry. "Thank you, Captain Zorax. We appreciate any assistance you can provide. Perhaps we could begin by evacuating those with the most pressing medical needs?" "A sensible approach," Zorax agreed. "We'll prepare our medical bay to receive patients. In the meantime, we can send over engineering teams to assess your damage and begin repairs." As Ralph coordinated with Captain Zorax to initiate the evacuation and repair efforts, word of the Qatarian ship's arrival spread rapidly through the Celestial Voyager. The ship's corridors buzzed with a mixture of relief and anxiety as passengers realized not everyone would be rescued. Tharok, the charismatic Orion who had advocated for surrender, now led a group of aliens demanding preferential treatment in the evacuation. They cornered Ralph outside the makeshift command center in Cargo Bay 2. "Clark!" Tharok called out, his green skin flushed dark with agitation. "My people have suffered enough. We demand to be first on the evacuation shuttles." Ralph held up his hands in a placating gesture. Tharok, I understand your concern, but we need to prioritize based on medical need and the technical expertise required to repair our ship. It's the only fair way. Fair? Tharok scoffed. What do humans know of fairness in the vastness of space? Lyra stepped forward, her presence immediately drawing attention. Tharok, please. Mr. Clark has led us through this crisis with wisdom and compassion. Trust in the process he's devising. The Orion's eyes narrowed as he looked between Ralph and Lyra. After a tense moment, he nodded curtly and stepped back. We'll be watching, Clark. Ensure your process truly is fair. As Tharok and his group dispersed, Ralph turned to Lyra with gratitude. Thank you for the support. We need to move quickly to establish the evacuation protocols before tensions escalate further. Together, they worked to create a selection process that balanced medical urgency with the need to retain essential personnel aboard the Celestial Voyager. As they worked, Ralph couldn't help but notice the grace and intelligence with which Lyra handled each challenge. Their eyes met often, lingering a moment longer each time. While overseeing the initial evacuation shuttles, Ralph received an urgent message from one of the security teams he'd dispatched earlier. Mr. Clark, we found something in Goldamar's quarters. You need to see this immediately. Ralph hurried to Damar's quarters, his mind racing. Inside, he found a hidden compartment containing encrypted data files and unfamiliar technology. As he sifted through the evidence, a chilling realization dawned on him. It was Damar, he murmured, piecing together the puzzle. He was working with some kind of anti-human organization. They wanted to sabotage the ship and make it look like human incompetence. Just then, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. Ralph rushed out to find Goldemar himself, having escaped confinement in the chaos of the evacuation. The Cardassian's eyes blazed with fury as he spotted Ralph. You! Damar snarled, lunging forward with unexpected speed. Ralph barely had time to react as Damar's fist connected with his jaw. He staggered back, tasting blood, but years of combat training kicked in. As Damar pressed his attack, Ralph ducked under a wild swing and drove his shoulder into the Cardassian's midsection. The two grappled fiercely, crashing into walls and overturning furniture. Despite Damar's superior strength, Ralph's agility and perseverance kept him in the fight. He managed to land a series of quick strikes to Damar's face and ribs, causing the Cardassian to wheeze and stumble. Finally, Ralph saw an opening. He feinted left, then dropped low and swept Damar's legs out from under him. The Cardassian crashed to the floor with a heavy thud. Before he could recover, Ralph was on him, pinning his arms and using his body weight to keep Damar immobilized. It's over, Damar, Ralph panted, tasting blood from his split lip. We know about your plan. You failed. A crowd had gathered to watch the confrontation, including several alien passengers who had been skeptical of human capabilities. Their expressions now showed a mix of shock and newfound respect for the human who had single-handedly subdued the powerful Cardassian. As security personnel arrived to take Damar into custody, Ralph noticed Captain Zorax among the onlookers. The Katarian's expression was unreadable, but he gave Ralph a small nod of acknowledgement. With Damar secured, Ralph turned his attention back to the pressing matter of the evacuation. He tapped his communicator, wincing slightly at the pain in his ribs. Lyra, meet me in Cargo Bay, 2. We need to adjust our evacuation plans. As he made his way through the corridors, Ralph could feel the ship's atmosphere changing. The fear and uncertainty that had permeated the Celestial Voyager for days was giving way to something new, a cautious hope, tinged with curiosity about what would come next. Ralph knew that the challenges were just the beginning. They still had a damaged ship to repair, limited resources to manage, and the looming threat of the anti-human organization to confront. But as he entered the cargo bay and saw Lyra waiting for him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the grit he felt, Ralph allowed himself a small smile. Whatever came next, they would face it together, humans, Katarians, and all the diverse species aboard the Celestial Voyager. And in doing so, they might just reshape the future of interstellar relations. Relations aboard the Celestial Voyager. And in doing so, they might just reshape the future of interstellar cooperation. Ralph's communicator chirped, interrupting his thoughts. Mr. Clark, Captain Zorax's deep voice resonated. Our long-range sensors have detected an asteroid field ahead. We need to discuss our approach. Understood, Captain. I'll be right there, Ralph replied, exchanging a quick glance with Lyra before heading to the bridge. On the main view screen, a vast field of tumbling rocks stretched as far as the eye could see. Captain Zorak stood beside Captain Zorn, both studying the tactical display with furrowed brows. The field is too dense to go around, Zorax explained as Ralph approached. We'll have to navigate through it. Ralph leaned in, studying the swirling patterns of asteroids. If we combine our sensor data, we might be able to plot a safe course, he suggested, his mind already racing with possibilities. Over the next few hours, Ralph worked tirelessly with a team of human and Qatarian navigators to chart their path. Lyra proved instrumental, her unique Qatarian senses allowing her to perceive subtle gravitational fluctuations that even the most advanced sensors missed. As they finalized their route, a violent tremor shook the ship. Alarms blared as the bridge erupted into chaos. "Report!" Ralph shouted, steadying himself against a console. Sovik's voice crackled over the comm. "Primary navigation systems are offline. It appears to be another act of sabotage." Ralph's expression resolute. "Sovik, meet me in Junction 12B. We need to get those systems back online now." Racing through the corridors, Ralph's mind whirled with the implications. Damar wasn't working alone, and at least one of his co-conspirators was still at large. He and Sovik worked feverishly, bypassing damaged circuits and rerouting power. As they neared completion, Ralph's communicator chirped again. "Clark!" It was Captain Zorn, his voice tight with urgency. "We have a situation on the bridge. Thurok and a group of aliens are attempting to seize control." Without hesitation, Ralph sprinted toward the bridge, his heart pounding. He arrived to find Thurok holding Captain Zorn at bay, a makeshift weapon in his hand. "This ends now, human," Thurok snarled. "We won't be led to our doom by your kind." Ralph assessed the situation quickly, noting the positions of Thurok's allies and the frightened bridge crew. He took a step forward, hands raised placatingly. "Thurok, think about what you're doing," Ralph said, his voice calm but firm. "We're about to enter an asteroid field. This is the worst possible time for a change in leadership." Thurok hesitated, his eyes darting between Ralph and the view screen showing the looming asteroids. Ralph seized the moment of uncertainty, lunging forward with lightning speed. He grappled with Thurok, using the Orion's own momentum to flip him onto his back. In a fluid motion, Ralph disarmed him and pinned him to the ground. The other mutineers, seeing their leader subdued, quickly surrendered to the security team that had arrived in Ralph's wake. With order restored, Ralph rushed back to help Sovik complete the navigation repairs. They worked with frantic efficiency, jury-rigging systems, and repurposing non-essential components. "That should do it," Ralph said, wiping sweat from his brow as the navigation console flickered back to life. "Let's hope it holds." As they entered the asteroid field, Ralph took the helm, coordinating closely with the Qatarian vessel. Lyra stood beside him, her multifaceted eyes tracking the asteroid's movements with preternatural accuracy. "Large mass bearing 220 Mark 15, she called out. Ralph's hands flew over the controls, adjusting their course with precision. The ships wove through the field in a breathtaking dance, narrowly avoiding collision after collision. Ralph's focus was absolute, his reactions honed by years of training and the urgency of their situation. Suddenly, a massive asteroid loomed before them, on a direct collision course with the Qatarian vessel. Ralph made a split-second decision. "Divert all power to forward shields," he ordered. "We're going to deflect it." The celestial Voyager surged forward, its weakened shields straining against the enormous rock. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed they would be crushed. Then, with a groaning of metal and a flash of energy, the asteroid glanced off their shields and tumbled away. A cheer went up on both ships as they cleared the asteroid field. Ralph slumped in his chair, exhausted but triumphant. Captain Zorax's face appeared on the console, his expression one of deep respect. "Exceptional flying, Mr. Clark," the Qatarian captain said. "You've saved both our ships today." Before Ralph could respond, an urgent message cut through the comm system. To any ships in range, this is the colony on Varus 3. We are under attack by an unknown force. Please assist. Ralph straightened, exchanging glances with Captain Zorn and Captain Zorax. The message continued, describing an assault by ships bearing the same markings as those who had sabotaged the Celestial Voyager. It's them, Ralph said grimly. The same group that tried to destroy us. Captain Zorn nodded solemnly. The question is, do we have the capability to help? Ralph looked around the bridge, seeing persistence in the eyes of both humans and aliens. They had faced death together, overcome impossible odds. Now they had a chance to strike back at those who had nearly destroyed them. Captain, Ralph said, his voice firm with grit, I believe we do, and more than that, I believe we have a responsibility to try. Captain Zorax nodded in agreement. The Stellar Horizon stands ready to assist. Together, we may be able to make a difference. As both ships altered course for Varus 3, Ralph felt a subtle shift in the air. The divisions between species that had seemed so stark before now felt insignificant in the face of a common enemy and a shared purpose. Lyra approached him, her eyes shimmering with an emotion Ralph couldn't quite name. You continue to surprise me, Ralph Clark, she said softly. Perhaps there is more to humans than I first believed. Ralph allowed himself a small smile. We're full of surprises, Lyra, and I have a feeling we're about to show the galaxy just what we're capable of. As the Celestial Voyager and the Stellar Horizon accelerated towards Varus III, Ralph began to plan their approach. The looming confrontation would test their newly forged alliance, their combat capabilities, and Ralph's leadership in ways he had never imagined. But as he looked at the diverse crew working in harmony around him, he felt a surge of confidence. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As the Celestial Voyager and the Stellar Horizon accelerated towards Varus III, Ralph wasted no time in assembling a joint strike team. He handpicked skilled crew members from both ships, including Lyra and Captain Zorax. The diverse group gathered in the Celestial Voyager's briefing room, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Our mission is clear, Ralph stated, activating a holographic display of Varus III. We'll infiltrate the enemy stronghold and disable their weapon systems. This operation requires precision, teamwork, and adaptability. Captain Zorax nodded, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. The Katarian contingent is prepared to follow your lead, Mr. Clark. Your actions have earned our trust. As Ralph outlined the infiltration plan, Lyra studied the tactical readouts, her antennae twitching slightly. The terrain near the stronghold is treacherous, she observed. We'll need to be cautious during our approach. The team spent the remainder of the journey fine-tuning their strategy and preparing their equipment. When they finally entered Varus III's orbit, the planet's surface was scarred with the telltale signs of battle. Their shuttle pierced the atmosphere, Ralph at the controls. As they neared the drop zone, a barrage of energy weapons lit up the sky around them. Ralph's hands danced across the controls, the shuttle weaving through the barrage with hair-raising precision. "Brace for impact," he shouted, as they made a rough landing behind enemy lines. The strike team poured out of the shuttle, immediately taking cover as enemy fire peppered their position. Ralph assessed the situation quickly, noting the placement of enemy fortifications. "Lyra, can you sense any hidden positions?" he asked, ducking as a bolt of energy sizzled overhead. Lyra closed her eyes, her antennae quivering. 3 sniper nests, located at 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and directly above us on that ridge. Ralph relayed the information to the team. "Zorax, take your squad and flank the position at 2 o'clock. Lyra, you're with me. We'll draw their fire and create an opening for the others." As one, the team sprang into action. Ralph and Lyra darted from cover to cover, their movements perfectly synchronized. Enemy fire intensified, but their unorthodox tactics kept the anti-human forces off balance. Ralph vaulted over a low wall, rolling to his feet and unleashing a barrage of suppressing fire. Lyra moved like a shadow at his side, her enhanced senses allowing her to anticipate enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. "Ralph, incoming!" she warned, pulling him down just as a grenade sailed over their heads. The explosion rocked the ground, showering them with debris. As the dust settled, Ralph saw an opening in the enemy line. "Now!" he shouted into his comm. Captain Zorax and his team surged forward, catching the enemy in a devastating crossfire. Within minutes, the outer defenses crumbled, and the strike team pushed deeper into enemy territory. As they advanced, Ralph's eye was drawn to a glint of metal in a half-destroyed bunker. He approached cautiously, Lyra covering him. "What is it?" she asked as Ralph knelt to examine the object. He lifted a sleek, unfamiliar weapon, its design unlike anything he'd seen before. "Advanced tech," he muttered, a crease forming between his brows. "This goes beyond simple anti-human sentiment. Someone's backing them with serious resources." Before he could examine it further, a fresh wave of enemy troops emerged from the stronghold. The strike team was forced to take cover as energy weapons lit up the battlefield. "We need to push through," Ralph shouted over the din of battle. "The longer we're out here, the more time they have to organize their defenses." The team fought their way forward, inch by bloody inch. Ralph's tactical acumen shone as he coordinated their movements, exploiting every weakness in the enemy's formation. Lyra's Katarian senses proved invaluable, allowing them to avoid ambushes and overcome obstacles. Finally, they breached the outer walls of the stronghold. As they regrouped in the shadow of the imposing structure, an explosion rocked the building. Chunks of debris rained down, separating Ralph and Lyra from the rest of the team. "Zorax, do you copy?" Ralph yelled into his comm, but only static answered. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "We can't wait for them. We need to complete the mission." Ralph nodded grimly. "You're right. Let's move." Together, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the stronghold, relying on each other's strengths to overcome the challenges they faced. Ralph's quick thinking and combat skills complemented Lyra's enhanced senses and agility. As they neared the central control room, Ralph's comm crackled to life. "Clark!" Sovik's voice came through, tense and urgent. "We've detected a massive energy buildup in the main facility. They're preparing to launch a weapon capable of destroying both ships in orbit." Ralph's eyes hardened. "Understood. We're almost at the control center. We'll stop it." They redoubled their pace, fighting through increasingly desperate resistance. Finally, they burst into the control room, weapons at the ready. A tall, severe-looking Romulan stood at the main console, his hand hovering over a glowing red button. He turned, his eyes narrowing as he took in Ralph and Lyra. "So," he said, his voice cold and precise, "the humans send their lapdog and his alien companion to stop us. How predictable." Ralph kept his weapon trained on the Romulan. "And you are?" "I am Vox," the Romulan replied, a sneer twisting his features. "The one who will put an end to humanity's unchecked expansion across the galaxy." "You're making a mistake, Vox," Ralph said, taking a cautious step forward. "Humanity isn't a threat to you or anyone else." Vox laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Naive fool. Your kind spreads like a virus, infecting every corner of space with your presence. We will not stand idly by while you upset the balance of power." Without warning, Vox lunged at Ralph, moving with inhuman speed. Ralph barely managed to dodge, feeling the wind of Vox's strike brush past his face. The two engaged in a furious, hand-to-hand battle, Ralph's combat training put to the ultimate test against Romulan's strength and speed. Lyra circled the fight, looking for an opening to assist. "Ralph, duck!" she called out, her antennae twitching wildly. Ralph dropped low without hesitation, narrowly avoiding a vicious roundhouse kick from Vox. He swept the Romulan's legs, but Vox recovered with cat-like agility. As they fought, Ralph could hear the whine of the weapon system powering up. He knew time was running out. Just then, the doors burst open. Captain Zorax and the rest of the strike team poured in, weapons blazing. They engaged Vox's guards, evening the odds. "Lyra, the console!" Ralph shouted, grappling with Vox. Lyra sprinted to the weapons controls, her fingers flying over the alien interface. Alarms blared as the countdown to launch entered its final seconds. Ralph broke free from Vox's grip, racing to join Lyra at the console. His engineering expertise, combined with her intuitive understanding of the system, allowed them to navigate the complex shutdown sequence. With a final desperate lunge, Ralph slammed his hand down on the override button. The alarms fell silent, and the ominous hum of the weapon faded away. Vox roared in frustration, but found himself surrounded by the strike team, his remaining guards subdued. As Zorax secured the prisoners, Ralph and Lyra began sifting through the facility's database. What they found sent a chill down Ralph's spine. "This goes way beyond Varus 3, he murmured, scrolling through file after file of operations reports and strategic plans. They have cells all across the galaxy. Before they could dig deeper, Ralph's comm chirped urgently. "Mr. Clark," came the voice of the Celestial Voyager's tactical officer. "We've detected a massive fleet on an intercept course. They're responding to some kind of distress signal from the planet." Ralph exchanged a grim look with Lyra and Zorax. "Understood," he replied. "We're on our way back. Prepare for immediate combat upon our return." As the strike team rushed back to their shuttle, Ralph's mind raced with the implications of what they'd discovered and the looming threat of the incoming fleet. The true test of their newfound human-alien alliance was yet to come, and the fate of galactic relations hung in the balance. Ralph's mind raced as he and the strike team sprinted back to their shuttle. The looming threat of the incoming fleet cast a shadow over their recent victory. As they boarded, Ralph's comm crackled to life. "Mr. Clark, we're detecting multiple warp signatures," reported the Celestial Voyager's tactical officer. "ETA 3 minutes. "Understood," Ralph replied, his voice steady despite the urgency. "Prepare for immediate combat upon our return." The shuttle rocketed through Varus III's atmosphere, pushing its engines to the limit. As they approached the Celestial Voyager, Ralph could see the Katarian rescue vessel moving into position alongside it. The moment they docked, Ralph and the team dispersed to their battle stations. He made his way to the bridge where Captain Sovic awaited. "Status report," Ralph demanded, sliding into the weapons control station. Sovic's eyes were fixed on the tactical display. "The enemy fleet has just dropped out of warp. We're outnumbered 4-1. Ralph studied the approaching vessels, his mind already formulating strategies. "Captain, I have an idea. It's risky, but it might give us an edge." As Ralph outlined his plan, Sovic's eyebrow raised slightly, the Vulcan equivalent of open surprise. "A bold strategy, Mr. Clark. Very well, let's proceed." Ralph opened a secure channel to the Katarian ship. "Captain Zorax, are you ready to make history?" The Katarian's multifaceted eyes glimmered on the screen. "Lead the way, Mr. Clark. We stand with you." The Celestial Voyager surged forward, positioning itself between the planet and the incoming fleet. Ralph's hands danced over the weapons console, priming the phasers and photon torpedoes. "Shields at maximum," he called out. "Bring us about, heading 047 Mark III. The ship responded instantly, turning to face the oncoming threat. The enemy fleet spread out in attack formation, their weapons charging. "Now!" Ralph shouted. The Celestial Voyager unleashed a barrage of phaser fire, targeting the lead ships. At the same time, it began a series of evasive maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. On the bridge of the enemy command ship, Talek, a stern-faced Romulan, watched with growing frustration. "How are they moving like that? Focus all fire on the human vessel." The space around the Celestial Voyager lit up with enemy fire, but Ralph's piloting kept them one step ahead. "Lyra," he called out, "what do you see?" Lyra, her antenna twitching, focused intently on the sensor readings. "Third ship from the left, it's adjusting course. They're trying to flank us." Ralph nodded, already adjusting their trajectory. "Good catch. Firing solution. Coordinates 182 by 44. A spread of photon torpedoes erupted from the Celestial Voyager, catching the flanking ship off guard. It spiraled out of formation, shields flickering. As the battle raged on, Ralph noticed a pattern emerging in the enemy's movements. His eyes narrowed as he studied their formation. "They're being coordinated by that ship," he muttered, indicating a large vessel holding position at the rear of the fleet. He turned to Sovic. "Captain, I have another idea. It's even riskier than the last one." Sovic nodded, a glimmer of what might have been approval in his eyes. "Proceed, Mr. Clark." Ralph outlined his plan to infiltrate the enemy command ship. It was audacious, borderline insane, but it just might work. Within minutes, Ralph led a small team to a modified shuttle equipped with Katarian cloaking technology. Lyra insisted on joining, along with a mix of human and alien crew members. As they prepared to launch, Ralph addressed his team. "This mission is voluntary. I won't order anyone to come with me." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes meeting Ralph's. "We're with you, Ralph. All of us." The shuttle slipped out of the Celestial Voyager's bay, its cloaking device rendering it invisible to the chaos of the battle around them. Ralph piloted with intense concentration, weaving through the debris and weapons fire. They approached the massive command ship, its hull overflowing with weapon emplacements. Ralph found a blind spot in its sensor coverage and brought them alongside. "Prepare for boarding," he whispered, as if the enemy might hear them through the vacuum of space. They cut through the hull with surgical precision, slipping into a deserted corridor. Ralph raised his hand, signaling the team to move forward. They encountered their first resistance at a junction. Ralph ducked as disruptor fire sizzled overhead, then returned fire with pinpoint accuracy. Lyra moved like a shadow, her Katarian agility allowing her to flank their opponents. The team fought their way through level after level, their diverse skills complementing each other perfectly. Human perseverance, Katarian senses, Andorian strength, all working in harmony. Finally, they reached the bridge. Ralph took a deep breath, knowing the real battle was about to begin. "On my mark," he said, meeting each team member's eyes. 3, 2, 1, now!" They burst onto the bridge in a coordinated assault. Ralph's eyes locked onto Talek, the Romulan commander, who spun to face this unexpected threat. "How dare you!" Talek snarled, drawing a wicked-looking blade. Ralph raised his phaser, but Talek moved with blinding speed, knocking it aside. The two men grappled, Talek's Romulan strength threatening to overwhelm Ralph. But Ralph had faced death before, had overcome impossible odds. He matched Talek's strength with technique, using the Romulan's momentum against him. As they fought, Ralph caught glimpses of his team securing the bridge. Lyra had made it to the main computer console, her fingers flying over the alien interface. "Ralph," she called out, "I've found it! Their entire operation, all their plans!" Talek roared in fury, redoubling his assault. Ralph felt his strength waning, but he refused to yield. He caught Talek's arm as the Romulan aimed a killing blow, the blade stopping inches from his throat. "It's over, Talek," Ralph grunted through gritted teeth. "Your fleet is in disarray. Your plans are exposed. Stand down." Talek's eyes darted around the bridge, seeing his officers subdued, his ship no longer under his control. With a cry of rage, he reached for a concealed panel on his uniform. Ralph's eyes widened as he recognized the motion. "He's trying to self-destruct the ship." With a surge of adrenaline, Ralph twisted, using Talek's own strength against him. The Romulan stumbled, his hand missing the hidden switch by millimeters. In that moment of imbalance, Ralph struck. A precisely aimed blow sent Talek crashing to the deck, unconscious. Silence fell on the bridge. Ralph looked around, his chest heaving with exertion. His team stood victorious, the enemy officers restrained. Lyra approached him, her antennae quivering with a mix of emotions. "It's done, Ralph. We've won." Ralph nodded, allowing himself a small smile. "We've won this battle, Lyra, but something tells me our journey is far from finished." As if to emphasize his words, the ship's computer chimed. On the main view screen, data began to scroll, the full extent of the anti-human organization's reach across the galaxy. Ralph and Lyra exchanged a look of both triumph and trepidation. They had achieved victory today, but the true scope of their challenge was only beginning to unfold before them. "This is—" Ralph trailed off, his eyes scanning the endless stream of data. "Overwhelming," Lyra finished, her antenna twitching with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Ralph nodded, his mind already racing with the implications. "We need to get this information to Earth immediately. The scope of this conspiracy, it's beyond anything we imagined." As if on cue, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Bridge to Mr. Clark," Captain Sovik's voice came through, as calm as ever despite the circumstances. Your presence is required. Ralph exchanged a quick glance with Lyra before heading to the bridge. As the doors slid open, he was greeted by a sight that made his breath catch in his throat. The view screen showed a growing armada of alien vessels surrounding the Celestial Voyager and the Katarian ship. "Status report," Ralph demanded, moving to his station. Sovic turned to face him, his Vulcan composure betraying a hint of what might have been concern. "It appears news of our victory has spread rapidly. These ships represent a coalition of species eager to align themselves with our cause." Ralph studied the assembled fleet, recognizing vessels from dozens of different alien races. Some he had encountered before, others were completely new to him. "This changes everything," he murmured. Over the next few days, the Celestial Voyager became a hub of frenzied activity. Ralph found himself at the center of it all, coordinating with Captain Sovic, Captain Zorax, and a growing number of alien dignitaries. Together, they began the monumental task of processing the intelligence gathered from the captured command ship. Ralph worked tirelessly alongside Lyra and a diverse team of analysts. The sheer volume of data was staggering, but as they delved deeper, a chilling picture began to emerge. "Look at this," Lyra said, her voice hushed as she pointed to a particularly encrypted file they had just cracked. "Sleeper agents, they're everywhere." Ralph leaned in, his eyes widening as he scanned the list of names and positions. High-ranking officials, influential business leaders, even respected academics, all secretly working for the anti-human organization. "This goes beyond just opposing human expansion," Ralph said, his voice grim. "They're positioned to destabilize entire governments." As they worked, the Celestial Voyager set course for Earth, now accompanied by its impressive escort fleet. The ship had become a symbol of hope and cooperation, drawing the attention of the entire galaxy. Ralph found himself thrust into the spotlight, fielding requests for interviews from alien journalists and meeting with dignitaries eager to establish formal alliances with humanity. It was a role he had never anticipated, but one he approached with the same perseverance and adaptability that had served him well throughout his career. During one such meeting, Ralph stood with Captain Zorax, addressing a group of alien representatives in the ship's conference room. "The victory at Varus III was not just a human achievement," Ralph said, gesturing to Zorax. "It was the result of cooperation between our species. This is the model we must follow moving forward." Zorax nodded, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. "Indeed, the threats we face know no borders. Only by standing together can we hope to overcome them." Their words seemed to resonate with the assembled dignitaries, but Ralph could sense an undercurrent of tension. Not everyone was comfortable with humanity's rapidly growing influence in galactic affairs. This became even more apparent when reports began to reach the ship of protests on some alien worlds. Footage showed crowds denouncing human expansion, their signs and chants a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. Ralph watched one such report in his quarters, his brow furrowed in concern. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called out. Lyra stepped in, her antennae drooping slightly, a sign Ralph had come to recognize as worry. "You've seen the reports?" she asked. Ralph nodded. "It's to be expected. Change is never easy, especially on a galactic scale." "There's more," Lyra said, handing him a datapad. "Long-range scans of the Sol system. We've detected something unusual." Ralph's eyes widened as he studied the readings. A massive structure, previously undetected, orbiting Jupiter. How is this possible? How did we miss this? Before Lyra could respond, the ship's alert system blared to life. "All senior staff to the bridge," Sovic's voice announced. As they rushed to respond, Ralph's mind raced with possibilities. The ancient structure, the sleeper agents, the growing coalition of allies and enemies, it all pointed to a reality far more complex than he had ever imagined. Stepping onto the bridge, Ralph was immediately struck by the tense atmosphere. On the main view screen, the image of the mysterious Jupiter structure loomed large. "Report," he said, moving to his station. Sovic turned to face him, one eyebrow raised in what passed for surprise on a Vulcan. "Mr. Clark, we've received a priority transmission from Earth. It's encoded for your eyes only." Ralph felt a chill run down his spine as he accessed the message. As he read, his expression hardened, a mix of shock and determination settling over his features. "Change of plans," he announced, looking up at the assembled crew. "We're not going to Earth. Set a course for Jupiter. Maximum warp." As the celestial Voyager and its allied fleet altered course, Ralph gazed at the image of the ancient structure. Whatever secrets it held, he knew they were about to plunge into a mystery that could reshape their understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The ship surged forward, the stars streaking past on the monitor. Ralph stood at his station, keenly aware of the weight of command on his shoulders. They were racing not just towards an unknown artifact, but towards a future fraught with danger and possibility. As Jupiter grew larger in their view, Ralph couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. The true test of their newfound human-alien alliance was about to begin, and the fate of galactic relations hung in the balance. The celestial Voyager and its allied fleet dropped out of warp, the gas giant Jupiter looming large before them. As they approached, the massive alien structure came into full view, its intricate design glowing with an otherworldly energy against the backdrop of the swirling Jovian atmosphere. Ralph stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the structure. Its size dwarfed even the largest ships in their fleet, its surface a maze of geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "Incredible," Lyra breathed beside him, her antennae quivering with excitement. Ralph nodded, then turned to address the bridge crew. "Prepare for the investigation. I'll lead the team myself." As they boarded the specially equipped shuttle, Ralph felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The team he'd assembled included the brightest minds from both human and alien contingents, each bringing unique skills and perspectives to the mission. Ralph skillfully piloted the shuttle towards the structure. As they drew near, its surface shimmered, and a previously invisible docking bay yawned open before them. "It's recognizing us," one of the alien scientists murmured in awe. Ralph guided the shuttle into the cavernous bay, setting it down gently. As the team disembarked, their footsteps echoed in the vast space, filled with technology beyond their comprehension. Strange symbols adorned the walls, pulsing with a soft light. Lyra's antenna twitched, her head tilting slightly. "I'm detecting faint energy signatures," she said, pointing down one of the corridors. "This way." They moved through winding passages, the walls seeming to shift and change around them. Suddenly, a holographic projection sprang to life before them. It showed early humans, clad in primitive furs, standing alongside beings of clearly advanced alien origin. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Yana, the team's xenoarchaeologist. "This predates our earliest civilizations by millennia." As they progressed, more holograms appeared, each depicting interactions between humans and various alien species throughout history. The implications were staggering, hinting at a long-forgotten connection between humanity and the stars. They reached the central core, a vast spherical chamber humming with energy. At its center stood an ancient control panel, its surface covered in unfamiliar symbols. Ralph approached cautiously. As he neared, the system sprang to life, responding to his presence. A holographic figure materialized before them, a being of clearly alien, yet strangely familiar appearance. "Welcome, children of the stars," the being said, its voice resonating through the chamber. "I am the curator, guardian of this repository of knowledge." The curator explained the true nature of the structure, a galactic library and vault of advanced technology. But it was the revelation about humanity's origins that left them reeling. "You are the descendants of an ancient spacefaring civilization," the curator said. "Your ancestors seeded countless worlds, adapting their offspring to survive in diverse environments. But Earth was unique, a hidden cradle for unmodified humans, preserving the original template of your species." Before they could fully process this earth-shattering information, alarms blared throughout the structure. The curator's expression grew grave. "Hostile forces approach. They seek to claim this knowledge for themselves." Ralph's communicator crackled to life. Captain Sovik's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Mr. Clark, we are under attack. The anti-human organization has found us." Ralph's mind raced. They couldn't let the library fall into enemy hands. "Curator, does this structure have any defenses?" The hologram nodded. Yes, but activation requires a direct neural interface with a human mind. The process is not without risk. Ralph stepped forward without hesitation. I'll do it. Ralph, no! Lyra protested, grabbing his arm. It could kill you. He met her eyes, seeing the fear and concern there. We don't have a choice. It's the only way to protect the library and save our allies. The curator guided Ralph to a raised platform. As he stepped onto it, tendrils of energy began to coil around him. Brace yourself, the curator warned. The influx of information will be intense. Ralph gasped as his consciousness expanded, his mind filled with the knowledge of countless civilizations. He saw the true extent of the anti-human organization, a complex web of manipulation and deceit orchestrated by a shadowy cabal. Through the haze of information, Ralph focused on the structure's defenses. With a thought, he activated them, feeling the surge of power as an energy field expanded outward, enveloping the entire Jovian system. Simultaneously, Ralph broadcast the truth about humanity's heritage across all frequencies, the message echoing across the galaxy. The revelation sent shockwaves through alien societies, toppling the anti-human organization's support in an instant. As the last of the enemy ships fell silent, Ralph's connection to the library became unstable. His body convulsed, overwhelmed by the ancient systems. Lyra rushed to his side, her Tarian abilities sensing the chaos in Ralph's mind. Without hesitation, she placed her hands on his temples, forming a unique psychic bond. I've got you, she whispered, her consciousness intertwining with his. Together, they navigated the torrent of information, Lyra's unique mental architecture helping to stabilize Ralph's human mind. Slowly, carefully, they disengaged from the ancient system. Ralph collapsed into Lyra's arms, his body trembling from the ordeal. But as he looked up at her, a weary smile crossed his face. We did it, he said softly. As the team helped Ralph to his feet, the curator reappeared, its holographic form seeming to radiate approval. You have done well, it said. The library is safe and a new chapter in galactic history has begun. But your journey, children of the stars, is a long way to go. Ralph nodded, leaning on Lyra for support as they made their way back to the shuttle. The structure's secrets were now theirs to explore, and humanity's place in the galaxy would never be the same. As they departed, Ralph couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of a much greater adventure.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.